Maniac McGee by Jerry Spinelli. Part 2. Chapter 22. Well, if you were the buffalo, the baby buffalo at the Elmwood Park Zoo, maybe it would have gone something like this. You wake up, you have breakfast, compliments of mother's milk. You mosey on over to the lean-to, and surprise, there's a strange new animal in here. It's bigger than you, but it's a lot smaller than Mom. It has hair, but only on top of its head, and it's sitting in the straw munching on a carrot like Mom does. Every morning, same thing. You get to expect it. Some mornings you forget Mom's milk, and you head right on over to the lean-to. The creature offers you a carrot, but all you know how to do is deal with his milk. You nuzzle the new funny smell. Nuzzle means to do like this. You nuzzle the new funny smelling hairy-headed animal, and it nuzzles you back. Mom doesn't seem to mind. After the nuzzling, the stranger climbs over the fence and goes away, not to return until that night. Only one morning, the stranger falls from the fence, and he lies on the ground on the other side of the fence. The creature doesn't move. You try to poke your nose through the chain links, but you can't reach. You can only watch, and only watch. Side note, Maniac's been on his own now for a couple of weeks, and he's malnourished, and he's passed out from lack of food. Time passes. Well, the old man was bumping through the zoo in the park pickup when he spotted the body clumped outside the buffalo pen. He wheels over and get out. A kid? At first, he could only stare at the body, then at the baby bison, whose large brown eyes seemed to be watching them both. The mother came lumbering over, nodding as if to confirm, a kid. The kid looked terrible. His clothes were scraps and rags, and wherever his body showed through, it was bony and dirty, and he was scratched up. The two bisons staring, seeming to say, well, do something. The old man gathered his own bones and muscles as best he could, and he managed to hoist the kid and get him to the pickup. He laid him on the seat, bent his legs so he could close the door, and he knew he should take the kid straight to the hospital, or a doctor, or someplace official, right? But the pickup just sort of steered itself back to the band shell, and there he was lugging the kid into the baseball equipment room. A band shell is kind of like down on Beach Boulevard. You know that place where they give concerts? That's considered a band shell. And there he was lugging the kid into the best baseball equipment room in back of the band shell. The baseball season was over by now, but the army green burlap bag still stood ready for the next umpire to call, play ball! He yanked out a couple of chest protectors that catchers wear, and he laid the kid down, careful with his head. Well, at least the kid was breathing. Though it wasn't cold, it seemed as if the kid ought to be covered, so the old man took his winter work jacket off the hook, and he laid it over the kid. And then he waited. And waited. And he watched. And with trembling, dusty fingers, he touched the kid's limp, scrawny hand. He had never really touched a kid or a kid's hand before in his life. Hi. Hey. The kid's voice was barely a squeak, but it threw him back, and he dropped the hand. Where am I? The old man cleared his throat. You's at the band shell. The band shell? Yeah, in the back, equipment room. The kid's eyes squinted and blinked. You? What about me? Who are you? Grayson. Grayson, do I know you? He got up. I guess you do now. He went to his hot plate, heated up some water, and made some chicken noodle cup of soup. He gave it to the kid, who was sitting up now. You want a spoon? He looked as though he could hardly lift the cup. He held it with both hands and gulped it down. Huh? Never mind. You still hungry? The kid flopped back down. A little. Wait here. Grayson said, and he left. 10 minutes later, he was back with a Zepp. Remember, that's a sub. A large. And it took the kid less time to polish it off than it had taken Grayson to get it. He told the kid not to eat so fast that he'd get sick. And the kid nodded. Grayson said, "Where'd you get them scratches?" "Oh, in some picker bush." "What were you doing there?" I was hiding." "Hiding? Who from?" "Some kids." "Where?" The kid pointed. Somewhere out there. Some other town." He crossed his legs Indian style on the chest protectors. Can I ask you a favor?" "Shoot." "Can we go somewhere and get some butterscotch crimpets?" Grayson squawked. "Crimpets? You still hungry?" "Yeah, for them I am." Grayson threw the greasy Zepp wrapper into the wastebasket. I don't know, kid. Maybe you ought to do something for me first." "Like what?" "Like tell me your name." It's Jeffrey McGee." "Where do you live?" "Well, I did live on Sycamore Street, 728. "Did?" I guess I don't anymore." The old man stared. "Did you say Sycamore?" "Yeah." "Ain't that in the East End?" "Yeah." With his fingernail, he scraped a patch of dirt off the kid's forearm. He stared at it. "What are you doing?" "I was seeing if you was white under there, all that dirt." Neither of them spoke for a while. "Anything else you want to ask me?" "Guess not." "Oh, come on, don't stop asking." "I'm asked out, kid." "How about the zoo, huh? Don't you want to know what I was doing at the zoo in the buffalo pen?" The old man sighed. "Okay, what?" "I was living there." "With the buffaloes?" "Yep, with the buffaloes." "You like buffaloes?" "Well, it was dark when I got there, and I thought it was the deer pen." "Yeah, they switched the deer and the buffaloes around last month." "Yeah, that's okay with me because I get along better with the buffaloes anyway." "Well, I'm going to tell you one thing," Grayson said, and he sniffed. "You sure do smell like one." The kid laughed. They both laughed. And when they finally come down, the kid said, Any chance of those crimpets now?" Grayson reached for the pickup keys. "Come on, let's go." Grayson got the crimpets all right. He bought a whole box of 3-packs. With 10 packs to a box, that was 30 butterscotch crimpets. Maniac thought he must have climbed out of that buffalo pen right into heaven. Then Grayson took Maniac home. Home for the old man was the Two Mills YMCA. Side note, up until about 1975, you could rent a room. For people that didn't have a lot of money, they could just rent a room and live at the YMCA. He lived in a room on the 3rd floor. But he didn't take Maniac up there. He took him downstairs to the locker room. He got him a towel, got him some soap, and told him to take off those rags, and he pointed the way to the showers. Maniac stayed in that shower for an hour. He hadn't done this since his last bath with the little ones. Couldn't remember the last time he had a bath. He smiled at the thought of Hester and Lester shrieking and splashing, the shower needle stinging his scratches, but it was a good, welcome back to town stinging. And when Maniac finally forced himself from the shower, he found the old man was waiting with clothes. Grayson's clothes. "I called the U.S. Army in to haul them buffalo rags away, and they come in here with gas masks on, and they used tongs to pick them up, and they put them in a steel box, and they took that box away to bury at the bottom of the first mine shaft they come to." Maniac couldn't stop laughing. Neither could Grayson, especially when he got a load of the kid drowning in his clothes. An hour later, after a few minor shopping sprees, Maniac had clothes of his own. making a connection here. Then this reminds you a little bit of Misha and Yuri. And for the rest of the afternoon, they cruised around town, talking and eating butterscotch crimpets. So, the old man said, now what you gonna do? Maniac thought it over. How about a job? I could work for the park like you do. Grayson didn't answer that. He said, and where do you think you're gonna stay? Maniac's answer was prompt. I could stay in the bandshell baseball equipment room. It's perfect. A tiny idea was beginning to worm its way into Grayson's head. He could barely feel it as it brushed by all this claptrap in his brain, and he ignored it and he said, what about school, kid? Maniac was silent. Some butterscotch crimpet icing had stayed behind on a wrapper, and he scooped it up and mopped it from his finger. He was wishing it were Mrs. Beale's finger, not his own. Grayson, who was not comfortable asking questions, was even less comfortable waiting for answers. I said, what about school, kid? What about it? You gotta go, kid. You're a kid, ain't you? I'm not going. But you gotta, kid, don't you? They'll make you go. Not if they don't find me. The old man just looked at him for a while with a mixture of puzzlement and recognition, as though the fish he had landed might be the same one he had thrown away long before. Why? He said. And Maniac felt why, more than he knew why. It had to do with homes and families and schools, and how a school seems sort of like a big home, but only a day home, because then it empties out and you can't stay there at night because it's not really a home, and you could never use it as your address because it's an address. The address is where you stay at night, where you walk right in the front door without knocking, where everybody talks to each other and they all use the same toaster. So all the other kids would be heading for their homes, their night homes, each of them, hundreds of them, flocking from school like birds from a tree, scattering across town, each breaking off to his or her own place, each home, each knowing exactly where they were going to land. School? Home? No. He was not going to have one without the other. If you try to make me go, I'll just run. Grayson said nothing. What the kid said actually made him feel good, but he had no idea why. And that brushing little worm of a notion or idea, it was beginning to tickle him now. And he just kept on driving.